Either she homeless or she got problems. That's the only reason why she run to a black man.
I like him already.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on!
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
Producer, director, writer. He is the ultimate filmmaker and bona fide foodie. You're listening to The Quidditas Factor with Michael J. Arbouet.
Thank you so much for joining me. Greetings, hello, and welcome to another episode of The Quidditas Factor. I am your host, Michael J. Arbouet. But that word Quidditas, that strange word, what does it mean? Adriana, please give them the definition.
Quidditas, Latin, the whatness of a thing, the essential nature of something, the quality that makes a thing what it is.
Correct. Quidditas is the whatness or essence of a thing or person. And in today's episode, we'll be interviewing director Jim Fall. Jim has a diverse directing career spanning in theater, television, and motion pictures. Jim's feature film career started with the acclaimed independent feature Trick, which premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and the Berlin Film Festival. And Jim made his studio directing debut with the Disney movie, the Lizzie McGuire Movie. It opened at number 2, right behind X-Men 2, its opening week. When I think of Jim Fall's journey, it reminds me of a quote from Winston Churchill. And that quote was, "Never give up on something that you can't go a day without thinking about." And that kind of sums up Jim's story because he's always striving to be better and to do better. And that's what Quidditas is. It's that magic that you have that just keeps you going and makes you want to be better. And so without any further ado, let's get into Jim Fall's story. Jim, hello, welcome.
Hey, good. How are you, Michael?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. So I'd like to start the show with that origin story. So Jim, tell me, was directing always your dream when you were younger?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have to say yes. It was always my dream. In fact, I don't remember. I used to think, I felt bad for people who didn't always know what they wanted to do because it must be very scary to not know. I've just always known. Although when I was young, there were two things. I played the guitar and I wrote songs, so I was kind of torn between wanting to sing and be a performer, but also wanting to make movies. And then, I don't know, there was just a moment, I think, and right after high school, I realized, no, I really want to make movies. But I think it was because, as a kid, you go to movies and there was something magical about them. I didn't understand what it was that made you cry or laugh, or why that swell of music at that particular place. And then it dawned on me that actual people were making these choices to make these things happen. So I wanted to be one of those people that made something that would make somebody else, would move somebody else the way I was moved when I saw movies.
So tell me, did you go to film school?
Well, I applied to USC and to NYU and didn't get into either. I was a very not the best student. I wasn't terrible, but I wasn't good enough to get into those two schools. So I got into Temple University in Philadelphia and my freshman year, and it turned out to be great. I loved Philadelphia. I loved the school. I learned a lot. But then I really wanted to be either in New York or California, and just so happened that well, New York was closer, clearly. So I remember taking my little Super 8 movie camera on the train and some of the short films I'd made in high school, and met with a professor at NYU, and somehow he got me in. My grades were okay at Temple, so I went to NYU undergrad.
So every film student's dream is to get into NYU. So you're there, and then you make your feature film Trick. Tell me about that story and how you got into the Sundance Film Festival.
Well, the jump from film school to Trick was a very long time. I mean, I didn't make Trick till I was 35.
Oh, wow. I thought this was a college thing.
No. I didn't graduate. I'm a college dropout. I went to NYU undergrad film school, and then stumbled out of school not really knowing how to get a movie made. And we're talking, this is, middle 80s, like 85. I was living in New York City, and I stumbled into directing theater. I had never directed theater before, but I figured if I'm going to call myself a director, I have to keep directing, right? And I really did not understand how to get a movie made. So it was kind of the best possible thing for me, because working in theater, you get to work with actors, and that's sort of I don't know, that can be the scariest thing. Like, how do you get performances out of people? How does that work? And so literally by trial and error, I directed a lot of small, crazy, wacky, way off Broadway shows. And then, it wasn't until the summer of 1994, and that would have been a good 10 years after I left school. 10 years, 85, 90, almost 10 years, that I found the script that would become Trick, my first movie. But that would take almost 4 years till we were finally shooting it in 1998. But if I hadn't been directing a play, I would never have found the script, because there was an actor in the play who knew the writer of Trick, and he recommended I read it, and I loved it. And then the writer Jason Schaefer and I set off on our journey to get the movie made.
So tell me about that. How, not having made a film before, how did you get the money? Tell me about that journey.
It was hard. I mean, it was very hard. I mean, I had made some shorts, but nothing, very, very, low budget Super 8 film shorts. So nothing that anybody would be that excited about. Although I had won a Teenage Film Award, but that didn't really, that didn't help that much in getting a feature film made. Basically, I found the script written by Jason Schaefer. Then I optioned it from him. And then the two of us started developing the script a little more, because it was kind of short when he first written it. It was only like 60, 70 pages. So we just started working on it together, and we would do readings. And, when we finally, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit though, when we got into Sundance, one of the first things I said when I got up to speak before the movie was I wanted to thank everybody who said no to me, because, I spent almost 5 years trying to get the movie made, and I kept getting no, the answer no. And so the only thing we could do was to go back to the script and try to fix things and iron things out. And we did a whole bunch of different readings with different actors, just to hear it out loud and fix things and embellish things and shift the story a little bit. And, finally, I only found the money because I finally asked a friend of mine, Andy Fleming, who is also a film director and had already gone to Hollywood and had made movies, but he was the same age as me. We went to NYU together. I asked him to help me, and he hooked me up with who would eventually become my producer. But it's not a coincidence that the script was finally ready to get made. So you have to do your homework. What is that old adage? Opportunity is when preparation meets.
Oh, wait, that's a Zig Ziglar quote. Success occurs when opportunity meets preparation.
My point is, I'm glad all those people said no, because had someone given me the money too soon, I would have made a much lesser film because the script wasn't ready.
So during this process, when you're doing the table reads and reading the script over and over again, was it more like theater? Did you guys end up getting closer as a family? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, Trick was very much a family labor of love. So many of the actors in the movie were people I had already known in New York City, actors I'd either worked with or were friends of mine or I'd seen perform and were just so funny. Steve Hayes, who plays Perry, the older, he's like, I guess 40 in the movie. He was a cabaret performer who I loved. Miss Coco, the drag queen, was someone I knew and was a fan of for a very long time in the early 90s, and had already actually worked with him in a play I'd written. And and the leads, Christian Campbell and J.P. Pittock, and of course Tori Spelling, were actors that we found and who auditioned for us, because it was hard finding. Now there's such a what is it? I mean, everyone gets a little upset when straight actors are playing gay, or when non-trans actors are playing trans. But back in '97, when we were casting this, nobody wanted to play gay. In fact, there were maybe there weren't that many gay actors that were out, so you couldn't. I tried, auditioning the 3 actors who were out at that point, and they weren't right for the part. So my point is, my two boys are straight playing gay, but back then that was actually a very brave thing for them to do. And it was, now, politically things have shifted and people get a little bent out of shape when straight people play gay. I personally am on the fence about that. I think the best actor gets the job, is my opinion. But yeah, so casting is everything. Especially in a romantic comedy, or especially in a comedy. You can't. I can't direct you to be funny. Either you're a funny person and a good actor, or you're not.
Yeah, and that's another question I wanted to ask you, because back then, when you're trying to make a movie like that, and back in the '90s, it was almost controversial to try to make a gay film. Like Hollywood didn't know how to approach it, So at that time you had movies that were the gay character was a comic relief type of character, right? And no one took it seriously. So when you finally decided to take the script on and make the movie, how did you feel, and what did you think what was going to happen?
Well, you're right in the sense that there were very few. The gay movies that had real integrity were very few and far between. There was a movie called Parting Glances that came out, I think, around 85 or 86. That was wonderful and still stands up. And if you haven't seen it, people should see that. There were a couple other. In fact, a mentor of mine, Artie Bresson Jr., they just re-released his movie. It's called Buddies from 1983. It's an AIDS drama that's really wonderful. But when I was making Trick, it was kind of, we were coming out of a very sad time where so many people had been dying, but the drug cocktail had just sort of started working for so many people with HIV/AIDS that I think it was a slightly more hopeful time. So when I found Jason's script, it completely dovetailed with my own sensibility that I want to make a movie that's not about AIDS, that's not about coming out, that's not about fag bashing, that's not where the characters are just gay and the story is human and sort of timeless. I think that's maybe why Trick has stood the test of time, because when you watch it now, sure, it's dated and it's maybe in its look a little bit and its music, and you can see people smoking in bars and nobody has a cell phone, although we did have cell phones in 98, but they weren't as ubiquitous as they are now. But I wanted to make a movie that was just where there was no homophobia, and that's one of the most lovely things about people still write me that when they saw the movie when they were 15 back then, that it gave them hope that they could live a life as an open gay person. And that was consciously and unconsciously part of my agenda to want to make this movie.
Okay, so tell me about that moment when you found out it got into Sundance, because I'm still waiting.
Well, it was such a charmed. It took forever to get the movie made, right? To finally get the money. But once we got the money, it just felt like it was very charmed, from the shooting of it to the casting of it, and then of course, luckily, I had one of my producers. His name is Bob Hawk. He's a film guru from way back, and I had met him through someone at Sundance whose name I cannot believe I'm forgetting his name at the moment. My brain. Anyway, luckily we had submitted a rough cut to Sundance, and they looked at it and they accepted it, and it blew me away. We literally were carrying, and this is back when we had film prints. We were carrying a wet print on a plane to Sundance, and Sundance was the very first time the movie had actually ever even been played in front of an audience. But we were lucky that they it's a blur. I feel like I'm not answering your question, because it was such a miracle. And then the biggest miracle too was we got Fine Line Features bought the movie for distribution. Now, we didn't win any awards. Awards are nice, and usually comedies don't get awards anyway. But we got the best award. Our movie sold after the third screening, and it was just a very emotional, wonderful, wonderful time.
Yeah. So your movie gets sold, and does that open the doors for you? Do you get an agent? What happened next?
Yeah, I mean the good thing about my producer Eric Darbeloff, who actually funded the movie, his partner Howard Cohen was an agent at United Talent Agency. So not only did I get a producer, but when the movie turned out well, Howard signed me at he worked at a major um, agency. So I managed to get an agent pretty quickly. But then, then I packed my bags and moved to Los Angeles. So it was a big transition to suddenly have gone from this, small labor of love movie made with my friends to being in Hollywood, where I kind of thought every movie would be that way, where everyone would just be wonderful, and it just isn't true. It's hard. It's not that way necessarily, although after maybe just 2 years out here, which can seem like an eternity, but yeah, it really wasn't. I got my first studio directing gig for Disney, of all places, and I directed the Lizzie McGuire movie, which at the time became a pretty big hit. It opened at number 2 under X-Men 2 was the number 1 movie, and my movie was number 2. And even now, 17 years later, all those kids who were 10 years old then are now 27 or whatever, and now they're all there's been this resurgence in popularity in that movie, which I'm really kind of enjoying.
So that was amazing. That's my next question. When you got that movie and you're in the Hollywood system now, how did that feel compared to directing a small movie?
It was equally wonderful, and I think mainly again because there were a lot of really wonderful people involved in the making of that movie, and I was afraid I was going to be micromanaged by Disney, right? I had no idea if I was going to be able to have the freedom to direct the movie the way I wanted to. But it turned out, they trusted me. They let me make the movie. In some part, I think the movie kind of fell between the cracks at Disney, mainly because it wasn't like a big budget movie, although the budget was $17 million, which is a lot for me. I mean, considering Trick only cost $450,000. But it, I don't know. It's hard. What's my point? My point is I had a wonderful producer named David Rossell. The script turned out pretty well, although there were things that had to be adjusted, and I actually rewrote some of it myself. So much of the music was stuff I had picked. In fact, one of my songwriter from Trick, David Friedman, I brought him in to write one of the songs for Lizzie, and Dean Pitchford, who wrote Footloose and many other things, Fame. He was a friend, and I got him to write the finale song for the movie. So there's and the soundtrack ended up going double platinum, which is amazing. But they let me make the movie, which was really nice. It was nice. I feel like my mark is all over that film. And I'm proud of that one in a different way. Of course, it's a different movie, but when you see the Disney logo come up and then your name, it's like, wow.
Yeah,
that's kind of
I
amazing.
can't imagine. So after that movie came out, what did you do next?
Then I did then you kind of go into this weird, like, what do you do next? I mean, I'm more of a director than a writer. I kind of reluctantly write because it's very hard for me and I'm slow at it. And, people say I'm good at it, but I am not a prolific writer. I can't just spit out a bunch of scripts like my real writer friends do. So I didn't have a lot of, and plus my taste was more indie, like, but I wanted to stay in the studio system. That's all to say that I was lucky that Craig Zadan and Neil Marin, who produced Hairspray and a lot of other wonderful things. Sadly, Craig Zadan died a few years ago, but they had a television movie called Wedding Wars that they were trying to get made, that John Stamos was in, and James Brolin. And it was this wonderful, funny take on gay marriage, and it was kind of ahead of the curve. It was before gay marriage had become a really big topic. It was before Prop 8 had happened out here, and all of that. It was right before all that, so it may have been a little ahead of its time, or maybe too ahead of its time in a way. but it was kind of a romantic comedy about the gay marriage issue. So I directed that. It was for A&E. It was a television movie. You can rent it now. It wasn't available for some reason for a very long time, but now you can. And I'm very proud of that one too, because it's really sweet. The politics are clear, but it's like a spoonful of sugar kind of thing. You watch it, and you know, I kind of think of it today. It's like I wish the whole premise is that this character John Stamos goes on strike when his straight brother. He finds out his straight brother is writing conservative speeches for the conservative governor, right? So he's going to be planning his straight brother's wedding. So he goes on strike, and then that starts a whole strike across the country where every gay person goes on strike. And I kind of think, I wish we would do that. I wish every person of color would go on strike. Every gay person, if we all went on strike, if we actually did what this movie says, it would make an impact. I think it would. So, yeah. So I'm very proud of that one.
So what's the most important lesson that you've learned so far that's had a positive effect on you as a filmmaker?
I think the best, I learned it on Trick, is, listen to your gut. I made Trick, and I made Lizzie McGuire, and I made Wedding Wars. I didn't write all of them. As a director, you do your bit rewriting some things, but it's listening to your gut and realizing, that your point of view is valid. I mean, I made Trick because that's the kind of movie I wanted to see. I directed the Lizzie McGuire movie, and all the things I put in it and all the music I picked was because I liked them. I wasn't making it I wasn't trying to peddle it to kids or anything. I really, it is a kids movie, but I made it because it made me laugh. Same thing with Wedding Wars. There's a certain tone, I think, that if you watch all of my movies in a row, they all have a similar tone, and that tone is my taste and my sense of humor. And so the point is, Trick made me realize, oh, my taste and my point of view and my sense of humor, other people like that too. So I stuck to my guns. When people try to say no or try to get you to change something, I'm not saying I'm stubborn. I'm not. You have to be open, creatively, but I'm talking overall. It taught me, oh, okay, I don't need to worry about that. And if people don't get it, they will get it when they see the finished product.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of believing in yourself, I guess, is what it is.
Yeah. I know like most filmmakers, they love movies, they watch movies. So this next question is, what film have you been most inspired by or influenced by, and why?
Well, I make comedies, and I love stories, and I love to cry at movies, and believe it or not, the movies that I think influenced me when I was young, and I grew up in the 70s. So I went to see, The Exorcist, Jaws, all the disaster movies. I don't know why, but, when you're young and you're 10 years old and those are the movies coming out, I still love all of them, although those aren't the kinds of movies I make. I like more heartfelt and humorous stuff. So I'd have to say The Exorcist, really, because that my dad took me to see that when I was 11 years old on Easter Sunday. And it blew my brain. It blew my mind. So it made me want to make movies.
Well, yeah. I think for me, that movie was Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh yeah.
I love the way Spielberg, even if you didn't believe in aliens, I feel like the way that he makes a movie, he draws you in and always appeals to your child side or your innocent side.
Yes.
And
yes.
That's the kind of movies that I like.
Yeah, Close Encounters is really special and beautiful. It really is. Although I wish he hadn't released that other version where where Richard Dreyfuss walks into the spaceship. I wasn't a fan of that version. The original version is the one I love.
Well, yeah.
But I agree with you. That movie's beautiful.
Generally speaking, when we learn about film and we talk about direction, tell me about when you're making movies. Is it important to collaborate? And I think you've touched on this a little bit, but do you find yourself you're more of a collaborator when you're a director?
Totally. I mean, I know what I want and I have a vision for it, but film is very much a collaboration. And what happens is, if I remember when I was a PA on a production assistant on a friend's movie, my friend Andy, actually, who I mentioned earlier. And I remember sitting there watching him direct thinking, what is he? I don't really see him doing anything. He'll get up every so often and whisper something to an actor and go sit down. Like, I thought he'd be out yelling or screaming, like the cliche. You realize when you actually start making movies that your job as a collaborator, as a director, is to put all the pieces together so that when you start shooting the movie, all of your collaborators are working on the same movie. Like, you're all aligned, and they've already made a bunch of wonderful choices that you've already agreed upon. You know what I mean? It's so if you're a good director, your job gets easy because you've cast the right actors, and so you don't have to, if that's most of it, and you've cast the right production people and designers around you who are your collaborators. And the same thing with actors. It's like, people kept telling me how much they thought Tori Spelling's performance in Trick was so good, and I must have done such an amazing job directing her. And it wasn't so much, I didn't sit there and try to pull a performance out of Tori. I cast her because she was right for the part, and she brought so much to it and was allowed to do. When you let your creative collaborators do what they do well and give them room to do it, then you get a wealth. It's an embarrassment of riches, but only if they're the right collaborators, only if they're all, wanting to make the same movie. If you've hired the wrong people, then you got a lot of trouble, so it's always a collaboration, but ultimately the failure and the success seems like it's all the director's fault, and it kind of is. But yeah, definitely collaborate.
We get noticed because of our successes, but we create them on the backs of our failures. Tell me about something that you failed at that actually turned it into a success.
Well, I guess, when I first, actually one of the first jobs I got out here was to direct a TV pilot, and it did not turn out well. It was badly produced. It was not, it just wasn't, it was the first thing I'd done out here. It got me in the Directors Guild, though, which is why I did it. I had to do it. No, and I wanted to get into more TV. But I learned, when you say, did it turn into success? It didn't, because it didn't get bought, but it taught me lessons about what Hollywood is and how to deal with, the crap and the people who will take advantage of you. So, there were some painful lessons, and when I think about failures also, I think about even just maybe not creative failures, but I think I was very naive when I came out here, when I would take meetings, and I didn't understand that, I just made a movie that went to Sundance and played across the country. And, so I'd go in these meetings not realizing that all that did was open the door. I still have to sit there and sell myself. And I don't think I sold myself. I wasn't arrogant by any means, but I don't think I actually realized I had to do a lot more homework for some of these meetings. So I mean, you learn from failures. I made a Christmas movie. The last Christmas movie I made was a really bad experience. And it was mostly because of the terrible people behind the camera. The producers were just awful. And it just was one of these, like I was saying earlier, it was just a bad mix of people that made the experience really painful. And it was the first time I'd been through that. I was like, wow, this is I guess I've been lucky. It was the 6th movie I'd made, and every one of the other ones was not easy, but at least a positive experience. Where this was just not a positive experience.
Yeah, that brings me to my next question. Is the film business fair? How do you make the apparatus work for you?
Is the film business fair?
Yeah.
No, no. There's nothing fair about it. It's just, I don't know. It's survival of the fittest. It's luck. It's you have to have some modicum of talent to get through the door. And if that talent is just being pushy or actual talent, I don't think there's any one way to be quote unquote successful. Then you have to, of course, define what success is, you know. I mean, I've kind of recently reevaluated my own definition of success. Yeah, sure, I'd like to be making more money, and I wish I were directing more television and just maybe financially. But, you know, I directed some TV and I didn't like it because you're a gun for hire for the most part when you're directing television.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm gearing up, hopefully, if we can ever get back into production after, you know, this pandemic slows down. My heart is set on making a sequel to Trick, my first movie. And it's all written, it's all ready to go, but now, you know, we can't make it until we can get together safely and without making each other sick. But that's the thing that's the only thing I want to do. That really is the only thing. My heart isn't in anything else. So, I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but is it fair? No. What was the other part of the question?
Yeah, no, just like how hard it is in the film business. I think people, like you were saying, go in kind of naive and not realize it. And that was actually leading to another question I had, is that it seems to me that the actual business of making movies has taken a turn, and I see a lot more people trying to get into television because it's a lot easier to work in that field than in the movie business. I wanted to get your opinion on that. Do you think that's true?
I think it's true. I don't think it's necessarily easier. I think it's in some ways it's just potentially more interesting because there's so much good TV now, and you know, going to the movie theater has become something that I don't know if it's died, because, you know, before the pandemic started, you know, box office was pretty good, but the frustrating for someone like me is I don't make superhero movies. That's not something I make. And so, you know, pretty much every theatrical release is a big movie just to get people into the theater. The exciting thing about television is there's so much character-driven storytelling that it's wonderful and exciting to watch. And if you can get a show on TV, it's such an exciting time to be in TV. Now, is it easy? I don't think it's, you use the word easy. I don't think it's easy, but the sheer volume of TV implies it's easy. But I also think, I just lost my train of thought, but yeah, no, I think it's an exciting time to get into TV because you can, it's a different way of telling stories. I mean, you can tell a story over 10 episodes or more. But I still love the simplicity and the structure of a well-told feature film. You know, I don't think feature films will ever die, but we're certainly living through an amazing time for television.
Yeah, I'm only a couple of years younger than you, but like what I miss in the 80s and 90s is that Hollywood was willing to take a chance on different types of movies and more independent type films. And like you said, it seems to me that all they're making are franchises, like anything that had a following. And, you know, like no one's going to make Midnight Cowboy today, or, you know,
Yeah.
or, you know, like movies like that. Do you think that there will ever be a resurgence of independent film and thought like that? Or do you think those days are over?
I think both. I think those days are over because I don't think that's why people go to the movies as much anymore. I think that's why television has become so successful, because the Midnight Cowboys and those darker movies were serving a purpose, and now all those dark stories can be told on television, you know, not on network television, obviously, but on, you know, every other channel now. So I don't know. You know what? I think it depends on the filmmakers. If someone's going to make a film, one film comes along that shifts everything, and then it all changes again. You know, romantic comedies are out of style for 5 years, and then, you know, like right now, no one wants to make a romantic comedy because those are all star driven. Like, what's the last romantic comedy you can think of that did any business at all, like in the theater. Like I can't think of one in the last, I don't know, five, 6, 10 years even. But one comes along and everything shifts, and suddenly everyone wants to make romantic comedies. So it's hard to say whether, but I think TV has taken over a lot of that. So I don't think it's gone. I think it's just shifted.
What's the best compliment you've ever received?
The best compliment, to be honest, is just hearing an audience laugh. Because, like I said, every one of my films has humor, and I love humor. So the best compliments to me, even when I'm directing a play, and most of the plays I've directed have been comedies, is I love going, like people used to like laugh because I would go to almost every production of a play I directed, and it's because I want to hear the laughs. I want to hear if there are laughs, and the audience doesn't always laugh, like especially and that's what I learned with Trick. With Trick, my first film, it's a comedy, but what's nice is a movie, the performances are the same every time, right? It's the same movie. In theater, the performances can shift, and actors get insecure if they don't get their laugh. Then they start shifting, and things can get worse, and then the audience isn't laughing, and it can get ugly. So the biggest compliment, I know that's not exactly the question you're really asking, but is the audience's response. And then I've gotten these lovely emails, like I said earlier, about people who saw Trick, and even the Lizzie McGuire movie. I'm going through this time right now where so many of these younger people who are now in their mid to late 20s have contacted me on social media and tell me how much they love that movie, and how because it was a movie they loved as a kid. And anytime somebody tells me they love the movie, or laughed or cried, that's the best compliment I can get, because that's the only thing I ever really wanted to do was to move people, make them laugh or cry the way I did when I saw the movies I loved.
What's something that people seem to misunderstand about you?
That's an interesting question. I think what comes to mind first is, I think, and this has even happened not only in my personal life but on the set, is I want to have a good time. I like laughing. I'm maybe too nice too long. And I suffer fools too long. And then it doesn't occur to me that there's a certain type of person who will take advantage of that. And then they push and push and push and push. And then I kind of hit a breaking point where it's my version of exploding. I don't think I've never exploded or gotten crazy mad on the set. I just don't do that. But there's a certain kind of person who doesn't understand, who takes advantage of my good nature. And then it's like a switch goes off in my brain where I get furious. Because it's like, I believe in that, you treat people the way you want to be treated, but when they're not treating you the way you're treating them, then I short circuit. So, yeah, I think people misunderstand my good nature for, I don't know. There's a certain respect level too. It's like I can be as silly and but there's a line that maybe it's only in my head, but I feel like the line is sort of just being polite and being, and sometimes people step over it,
right,
with me.
Tell me about a person who's either touched your heart or made you feel inspired. Like, how did that person change your life?
Well, okay. I mean, I guess I'm just going to think about what's right in front of me right now. The man I've been seeing for the last 3 years, we're so different. I mean, he is an engineer. He has a very corporate brain in the sense that he's been in corporate situations his whole life. So he has a very thoughtful way of responding to things. Sometimes I find it very frustrating. Whereas because sometimes takes longer than I think is necessary to respond, but he's actually just trying to think of what the right thing is to say. Now, the only time I think about things I regret is when I've opened my big mouth too soon because I'm mad, and I'm, I'm a theater person. All my friends have big mouths, and we all talk over each other and cut each other off, and we love each other, but we will just, send barbs back and forth. So, Brian makes me think about what I'm going to say before I say it. Now, I don't mean makes me self-conscious. Sometimes he does, and that's not a good thing. I need to not be self-conscious, but he does make me sometimes think, I need to slow down, and so he inspires me to be a little more of an adult because, sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm not. So I don't know.
What's one common myth about a profession that you'd like to debunk right now?
I'm not sure it's a myth, because so many people have stories about directors being complete assholes to their crew and to their cast. And, sort of harkening back to what I said about being nice, I can't, I guess because I'm so grateful to be there that I can't, even after having made 6 movies, I still, when you're actually on the set and able to make your movie, I almost can't believe it that I'm there. And so I'm so concerned that everyone's having a good time and is happy that I'm grateful to be there. Whereas I hear these stories where directors or anybody in the creative, anybody in the film industry, when they're assholes or they're screamers or they're mean or they're passive aggressive and all this kind of stuff, I don't get it. So I think it's a myth, because all my director friends that I know are not assholes. We have to be a little self-involved, a little narcissistic, we're definitely focused people. We have to be. We're directors. That's common. But I don't think filmmakers are the assholes. I hope they're not. Mm-hmm. I don't know any asshole filmmakers.
More producers, right?
Maybe. I mean, producers are different. They've got. Yeah, they can be. Yes. In fact, I know a couple.
Tell me a funny story that happened on set.
Well, 2 things. I guess I'm thinking. Well, when I made Trick, my first film, you only get to spend money on having a crane for a crane shot like once in a low budget movie, right? So we had a crane, which ends up being the final shot in the movie where Gabriel is running down the street in New York City and the camera goes up above the trees, and this is before drones, so it was expensive. And I remember we were shooting, and we had everything takes twice as long as you think, and we had already gone past our permit time, but luckily we got that shot. But that's reminding me of that, my 2 straight boys playing gay, the kiss that's in the movie when they kiss at the end, spoiler alert, they kiss at the end. That's actually the first kiss they did. We didn't rehearse the kiss. And the same thing in the Lizzie McGuire movie, because when Hilary Duff, when I met with her the first time, she'd been playing that role for almost 4 years on TV, and her co-star, the character's name is Gordo. In this movie, they finally kiss at the end of the movie. Like, it's been this long, slow burn to them finally having a kiss, right? But the first thing out of her mouth was, "I don't have to kiss Gordo, do I?" It's like, yeah, you kind of do. It's in the script. So, but it's the same thing. When they kiss in the movie, at the end of the movie, it's literally their first kiss. We didn't rehearse the kiss. Like, we rehearsed it, but I didn't have them kiss until the camera was rolling. So there's 2 first-time kisses in both of my first 2 movies.
Oh, that's great. Outside of directing, what are you curious about right now?
I'm curious about how the hell we're all going to come out of this time we're living through. You're interviewing me right when the COVID-19 is sort of spiking up again, and we all had a glimmer of hope that maybe this would be over sooner than later, and now it feels like it's going to be later. So I'm interested in how we're all going to recover from this. I don't know. when I think about what else I would have wanted to do with my life, I don't have any regrets about what I've done, but something, we went to Yosemite. I went to Yosemite for the first time last year with Brian a year ago, actually, right now. And it reminded me that I wish I know the other thing I'd love to be was a park ranger. I just think something about, I don't know, something about just being in a beautiful park all day or alone in a fire tower all day really appeals to me.
If you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell him?
I would tell him to, of course, I'm thinking in terms of filmmaking because we've been talking about it so much. In terms of career, I would tell him to read more scripts sooner and learn how to write sooner, because that's the thing I realized was the missing link to my understanding how movies get made, is understanding how stories are told. When I got out here and I started having meetings as a director, like the meetings are about storytelling. They're about how are you going to fix this story. And you only learn that by reading scripts and understanding how story works. So I would have told me to read more screenplays and figure out how to learn to really write. On a personal level, I was in New York City. I got there in 1982. Right when AIDS started to explode right then, and I was right in the center of it. And I luckily, and I say luckily, I think it was luck. I'm still here. I'm HIV negative. I'm not sure exactly why, but I would tell me to stay safe, stay even safer than I was then, because it took me a while to really take it seriously. So many people are gone who didn't get the news in time to be safe. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's really all I would say. You got to kind of go through make all your mistakes.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe be more aggressive, not be quite so shy. You look at pictures of yourself when you're 18 and you remember feeling insecure and fat and ugly. And then you look at yourself like, oh my God, I wasn't any of those things. What was I thinking? Why was I? But maybe that's what kept me safe. Maybe I was insecure enough to stay safe. So who knows?
Is there anything I should have asked you but didn't?
No, I guess my question to you is, what do you hope your listeners will be getting out of this interview and other interviews? Because it's an interesting concept for a podcast.
I guess what I want people to realize from this show is that it's never too late. I heard this lecture by Robert Rodriguez one time. He said that if you're going to fall, don't worry, fall. You may stumble, but you may stumble upon something great. And that always stayed with me. And the word Quidditas, which I went over in the beginning of the show, means the whatness or essence of a thing or person. And I don't think people realize that they have this power to turn things around, that they have this energy inside them. They tend to give up too quickly. And what people have to also realize is that you're not competing against anyone except yourself. So, if you want to do better, you're competing against yourself to do better. You're not competing against, Bob or Jane or Harry. You're competing against yourself, and you can conquer your fears, your doubts, just by sticking with it and giving it a try and being your best self. So that's what I hope people take from this podcast.
No, it's very true. I mean, that is, I also, for me, there were, like I said, I didn't get made till I was 35. And that's kind of late in the game, to be honest. I mean, most, I grew up as you're a little younger than me, but not that much, you said. And so, you hear these stories about Spielberg, directing, Jaws, and even Joan Crawford in Night Gallery when he was 21. And it, that burns in your brain, all these 21-year-olds back in the 70s making these, industry-changing movies. And here I was in New York City, temping in a bank, directing kooky shows off Broadway, I remember telling my therapist, I was in therapy then, and I literally said, if I can't get Trick made, I'm going to kill myself. And it literally scared me because I meant it. I'm like, I can't. I'm going to kill myself. And maybe that was part of it. Maybe because it certainly took me a long time to figure out, too long probably. But you know what? We all have our own journey and our own timing. And listen, it worked out. I made a movie I'm very proud of, and it, so something went right later than, because like I said, my friend Andy, he had already been out in LA for 10 years and was making movies and doing well. And here I was, directing stupid shows. And I thought, oh God, when is this ever? I'm getting old. What am I doing at 34, temping in a bank? Like, God.
Yeah.
But so I'm not sure what my point is, other than, yeah, it's never too late, but you have to keep at it somehow, and you also have to define what success is. People look at me like I'm this success, and at the same time, I feel like I'm a failure in so many ways. Like I'm not an A-list director. I'm not, directing 100 TV shows. I'm not doing things that other director friends of mine have done. But, they haven't made a movie like Trick or even Lizzie McGuire that has kind of stood the test of time. So you kind of you have to balance it out and just be grateful for what you can accomplish. It's a weird dance.
So my last question to you before I let you go is, and I think you've answered this, but if you can elaborate on it a little more, what does the future hold for Jim Fall?
Well, the future right now is very, I'm a generally positive person. And like I said, come hell or high water, I'm going to get Trick 2 made. So that's really all I can see. That's the only thing I can see. I'm going to literally will it into existence because it has to happen. Then, as you probably know, being in the industry, it's tough when you haven't just made something. It's very hard to get other work, but once you're actually making a movie, there's this bubble around you for a short period of time where you can parlay that momentum into other jobs. So I'm hoping that A, first and foremost, that I get Trick 2 made, and then B, that can jumpstart other opportunities. I have some TV ideas I've been developing with some friends, and just I would love to get just some gun for hire work on TV, to be honest. And that sounds whatever, opportunist or whatever, but I mean, there's so many shows I would love to be directing. So that's really my agenda at the moment, but mainly just to get Trick 2 made, because I feel like everything is going to stem from getting another movie made.
Jim, thank you so much for doing this. I know I've learned something. I believe the audience has learned something as well. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. Can you take us out?
This is Jim Fall, and you're listening to The Quidditas Factor.
Thank you for listening to The Quidditas Factor. I am Michael J. Arbouet. Before I let you guys go, please visit my website at www.mikearbouet.com. That's MikeArbouet.com. And please check out the Quidditas page and go to my shop and go to Arbor Artifacts and buy a t-shirt that will help keep the show going, as well as my wife's Etsy store. That is Poem Jewelry Design. She makes wonderful jewelry, so if you're looking for something for someone, please check that out. And also, if you want to become a patron, please, by all means, check out my Patreon page. Click on the button on the website and become a patron for like $1 a month or $5 a month. You really help the show going, and I'll give you some secret tips and stuff that didn't end up in the broadcast. Little tidbits of knowledge information that you might like. Please come back next Tuesday for an all-new episode of The Quidditas Factor. Thank you for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to The Quidditas Factor with Michael J. Arbouet. We'll catch you next time.